1.
Good afternoon. This is a public hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on August 25th, 2021, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 272. My name is Bob Rawls, and I serve as the chair. Hearings are broadcast live on Channel 18 and also recorded for the on-demand archives available on the town's website. Today's hearing is being conducted via remote video conference, originally pursuant to the governor's emergency COVID order, and now under an order allowing remote public meetings through April 1st, 2022. The agenda and copies of documents for review today are posted on the town's website. To all participants, please remain muted unless you are speaking. If you're attending via phone, you can mute using *6 and use *6 again to unmute. After presentations by applicants and/or their representatives, I will normally ask for comments and questions from commissioners, then the same from any interested parties. If you're on the Teams platform, indicate that you wish to speak by using the raise hand feature. If you're attending by phone, please unmute with *6 and address the chair. If you are not a commissioner and you are on the Teams platform, please keep your camera turned off unless you are speaking. The commission will vote on each matter by roll call. So that we have a record of a quorum, I will now ask each commissioner to indicate their presence. Bob Del Vecchio.
Del Vecchio, present.
Janet Williams.
Present.
Tom Clark.
Present.
And I will announce at this point that Joe Kitts has resigned from the commission, but we do hope to see him back when circumstances allow. Karen Latin.
Present.
Terry Sullivan.
Present.
And associates Mary Sullivan.
Present.
Tina Francisconi.
Present.
And William Doherty. I don't hear from William. All right, so I believe that we have quorum, and also I think we've had a few continuations, which Nikki, I guess you can announce.
Yep, so we can just jump right in because they're the first 3 agenda items
Okay.
conveniently. So these we're opening for notices of intent. 631 Riverview Drive, William and Iris Lee, map 8K, parcel C-53, SC 10-3502, land management and view maintenance. They have requested a continuance to September 22nd, 2021, due to difficulty retaining a restoration specialist. So unfortunately, all of these are continued to different dates, so we have to vote on them separately.
Vote on each one, okay.
Yep, right. So we can go ahead and vote on the 631 Riverview Drive.
All right, if we can have a motion.
Make a motion to continue 631 Riverview Drive to September 22nd, 2021.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote. Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Terry.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
All right, next we have 356, 366 Shore Road, Chatham Bars Inn, map 16F, parcel 25E5 and 24A-E6. This is beach access stairway. They have requested a continuance to September 8th. I believe they're still just trying to make plan updates, as well as they've, have been going to zoning and stuff as well. So that's September 8th.
Okay. Bob, if you will make the motion.
Make a motion to continue 356 and 366 Shore Road, Chatham Bars Inn to September 8th, 2021.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote. Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Terry.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Then we have 68 Shell Drive, Katama Point LLC, map 14K, parcel W50, SC 10-3466. This is a continued hearing for the dwelling. And they have requested a continuance to November 10th, 2021, and I think they are just having zoning issues.
They are indeed. All right, may we have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we continue 68 Shell Drive to November 10th, 2021.
Clark, second.
Roll call. Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
and Terry,
Aye.
and
Aye.
myself, and I vote aye as well.
All right, now we can actually get to business. 157 Sears Road, James Bartlett, map 11A1, parcel 4-T2, SC 10-3504, proposed coastal bank and erosion stability and restoration. Thad, are you here?
I am.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were, actually taking vacation or just pretending to.
That's a long distance call, Thad.
It all works. Somehow it's free.
All right.
All
Do you
right,
want me to share the plan then?
That would be appreciated.
Okay. No
And
problem.
then is anyone from Seth's office here?
Yes, it's here as well.
All right, while Nikki is filling that up on the screen, we did have a very productive site visit and asked our questions and got our answers. And I don't believe that we at the last hearing asked for any additional or revised materials. So I guess if you have anything additional to add, Seth, or anybody from your team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Seth Wilkinson. I just have one minor point to add. I described the typical simple seasonal snow fencing that we put along the seaward edge of the marsh just during the establishment. So during the growing months, during the establishment period in the first 2 to 3 years, and then went back to check and realized we had omitted that note. So we will submit a revised plan with that in our land management plan, just noting that we would be proposing to put up during the growing season a simple snow fence just to keep the rack and various flotsam and jetsam that washes in and can threaten a young marsh. Just a note that we will get you that revision.
So that snow fence will be vertical or horizontal to the shoreline?
It would run parallel to the shoreline along the seaward edge of the marsh. So the idea is in a high tide situation where the seaweed, floating seaweed would wash in, it would just sort of get held up in that snow fencing and then get deposited just on the seaward edge. And then after the plants senesce and go dormant for the winter, we remove that snow fencing. It doesn't matter if any rack is deposited on a dormant plant.
Mm-hmm. And would that be for a finite period of time or?
Yes, just the first 2 to 3 growing seasons.
2 to 3, okay. All right. I guess I'll just open this up to the commission. I have one question, but I'll save it to the end.
I have a question.
Okay, Tom.
When I was out there, I don't know if it was you, Seth, or one of your compatriots that gave me an excellent explanation why it would be difficult to repair the damage to the saltgrass or plants that are there that clearly have been washed away, and some of the soil has gone too. If you could put that, explain that again, I think it would be helpful for the record on what's being done. Thank you.
Certainly, happy to. Direct planting of salt marsh species after the peat has eroded away. So typically what would happen with a fringing marsh like that is it's a combination of loss of plant materials and then the elevation that is comprised primarily of peat, that sort of elevated elevation that those fringing marshes provide. As that it deteriorates and is washed away, you can go back to try and plant those salt marsh species. However, you're now planting them at a significantly lower elevation, and they are subjected to considerably longer inundation periods of salt water than the adjacent healthy marshes would be. Compounding that, you're also planting nursery-grown native species, which have more limited root systems, and so they have even less sort of tolerance of extended inundation periods. So it's a critical point to get that elevation up and then plant. Otherwise, the chances of success are unfortunately extremely low. We learned that early in our in our careers in salt marsh ecology. If the marshes are planted too low, they have a much lower likelihood of success.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob, your hand is up.
Yes, Seth. I was going to make some comments on the planting on the coastal bank. You're going to be planting shrubs and grasses in the area that's eroded. And I was wondering, I know you're going to be removing invasives from that area first. I was wondering if you could remove invasives like beyond the planting area so the invasives don't encroach again in the near future.
Yes. So the idea is that in the screenshot that's on the screen right now, the entire green area up to the top of the embankment would be addressed with invasive plant management. So that green, see the fibrils are shown in gray. And
I see. Okay. Yeah.
So the idea is that we would go all the way to the top of the bank.
Okay. So that's good. Okay. And I would just like to make the recommendation that we address that hard structure adjacent to the property line. I know one post maybe is across the property line, so that could be removed. But I like to make I like to see if we could have that whole structure on the end removed going forward. And Seth, that would help the project, do you think?
I think the likelihood of success would increase with the removal of that fence. It's hard to know what to call it technically. Yes, it's a groin, but it's more like a fence at this point because it's porous underneath.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, on that note, Bob, I'm not sure what mechanism we could use as the commission there for that.
So I'll have to go back and I guess see if, we've been told that it's unlicensed. I'll have to see if I can figure out when it went in, and see if I have a way via, enforcement order to get it out. But I have a feeling it's been there for quite a long time, so.
It has that appearance.
Maybe before the Wetlands Protection Act, so.
We'll do what we can do.
But 3/4 of it is over the property line. I noticed that the survey that was undertaken by Tad and his group made it rather apparent that most of that structure actually is on the applicant's property and not on the neighbor's property.
Right, the first section, but there's that whole, row of, the continued fencing. So, so I think that they're fully in their right to get rid of the part that's on their property, no problem. But the rest of it on the other person's property, that's kind of a separate issue that I'll have to do research on and probably get an opinion from DEP about.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just referring to the part of that one structure that was across the property line. I wasn't referring to the others.
Yep.
So is that it, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, so Janet is waving her hand about.
I
Let's hear
was-
from it, Janet.
just because this was not what I was going to ask about, but since it's come up, it seems to me that for purposes of protecting this project, including a requirement that the part of the structure that's on this property be removed to protect the project is completely appropriate and within our rights. And then going forward, we can deal with whatever the legal status of the rest of it is. But I think we should include the part that's on the property in this particular order.
And so, in other words, as an order of conditions, say that it shall be removed.
Yep. Yeah, because the removal of that last part of the structure has, as Seth has said, a likely impact on enhancing the success of this project. So I think that's a fine thing to do. But anyway,
The problem with that potentially is, though, if it's an order of condition and they are not successful in getting it removed, and then they go for a certificate of compliance, it is a problem.
How?
This is that. I'm not worried about it. That would likely be removed first.
Okay, well, as long as you're confident.
Are we
We're
saying the
talking
whole
about-
section or just the part that's on their property? Because
Just on
that
that property.
They have no authority, they have no ability to remove anything on someone else's property, but the part that's on there.
Yeah, there should have
That's
no
why I asked Tad a lot about how they did the survey and stuff, so that I make sure that the two survey points that he had staked were in fact quite accurate. And I was very impressed with the level of effort that went to surveying the property line.
All right, well, if everyone's okay with that, we'll add that as an order of condition.
Okay. So the question I was going to ask, the first was, Seth, so the invasive removal and replanting is only happening on the bank directly above the fiber roll array. To what extent are there invasives on either side of that would need to be managed and controlled in order for this area to repopulate with natives?
Sure, always an excellent question. We're bringing it pretty close to the property line at the eastern end, and I think whether we stop at 5 feet from the property line or the property line, it's not going to make much difference at that end. The Bartletts would consider doing more invasive plant management, and we've talked about that. I think they're just a little bit leery about potentially destabilizing the embankment with the loss of plant materials. It's something I'm less concerned about, candidly, but I've also had a lot more experience on that. Apparently they saw another site in the area that wasn't anything we worked on, and the invasive plants were removed, and then it led to some instability. So they're a little nervous. So their desire is to do this first, and then when we can demonstrate that everything's stable, the invasive plants removed, and it's revegetated, then there is interest to extend that further, but they prefer to do that through an amendment where they would just be expanding that area of the exact same activity, just moving westward, and they hopefully the fiber roll array won't be required there. We've just sort of proposed the fiber roll array where we've developed instability, but they are open to doing more invasive plant management. It is a steep bank, and they're just frankly nervous about it, so they'd rather do it in sections.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm looking forward, though, to the day that the whole thing gets done and the restoration of this section of the bank is all completed. That's great. The other question I have is about the transitional high marsh. It's in its location. It is surrounded on all four sides by beach, by sand. Although the mean high water will come up to it. Does that limit its ability to expand and migrate, or might it expand and migrate despite the fact that it's the only marsh along that section of the beach?
Yeah, another excellent question. The only thing I think that would limit its ability for movement is the lack of peat on the landward side. I would expect that where there's, you can see on the screen now, where there's the existing marsh immediately seaward of the proposed marsh, we would absolutely anticipate, because you have a stable peat bed existing and what will be a stable peat bed proposed, that those existing marsh species should migrate landward and ultimately make use of that stable growing medium. But this is how salt marshes migrate. They do migrate landward. They just tend to do it a little more slowly because they sort of have to build that dense root mat as they move. But that is, I mean, when you walk the outer beach, like in the Nauset area after a nor'easter, and you see broken sections of broken up peat, that's often ancient peat from when there was a frontal dune to seaward and then a beach to seaward of that, often hundreds of yards. And what we're actually walking on when we walk on the present outer beach there is former salt marsh, and that dune has just been moving landward over time. My point for that anecdote is that those marshes do move landward, and you're sort of seeing it in reverse order there, but that is natural progression. So there's nothing here that would stop the migration. It's just that I would expect the existing marsh species to migrate into our proposed marsh area more rapidly than species moving from the planted area landward, because they'll just have a little bit tougher. They'll have to go slower to build that peat layer.
Yep, got it. That would be something that would be great to see that happen. Thank you. That's it.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised. I think this is by all appearances a worthwhile project and properly done. So I will mention one more time the issue that I raised the first time around, which is you are talking about putting 8 to 10 inch cobble at the bottom, and that's this big. And I do, as I said before, I recall us in the past, in my earlier days in the commission, rejecting that approach in some cases, or at least in the cases I can remember. So I guess, Seth, I'll ask, and you gave reasons why that's not a concern. I'm just asking, I would turn the question around for you. What would be too big? Which size of cobble would be too big in the sense it would pose a danger to the resource area if it escaped?
Sure. So there's a couple important aspects of sort of how rounded cobbles behave in an intertidal area like this. And I would start by saying the higher the exposure of the energy, the larger rocks can be moved. We are, and that may sound strange for me to say that. I mean, that principle probably isn't strange, but I'm prefacing it by saying that we wouldn't want to put such large stones into this area that if after like a catastrophic storm event, that they didn't move. And the reason is that when you have immovable rocks, you actually accelerate, counter popular belief, you accelerate erosion, because as the water moves by an immovable object, the parts of the rock, the stormwater velocity actually increases. It slows down on the front, but it speeds up behind. And so sometimes folks will say, we just want to line our beach with rocks to help with erosion. Well, that actually has the opposite effect. So that's the first consideration. So something that would be too big would be something that would never be moved and would exacerbate. If you got into a catastrophic type event here, we actually, the kind that destroy existing marshes, frankly, then you would want those stones to actually be able to move. There is good documentation that they only move landward, they don't move seaward. And that's because the energy is the waves are moving things landward. And unlike sand, which can be suspended in the water column and then go wherever the water is going, cobbles are too heavy for that. These are 60 pounds, so they're going to drop right out. After the wave recedes, they drop out. They don't travel with the wave. They might move a foot or so. I say all that noting that in the few years that we've had these incorporated, we have seen zero movement, which is ideal. But we also haven't had any catastrophic storm events. So these have been sized, I believe, at an appropriate size to provide the important ballast for this growing medium, because you have to remember that a lot of the growing medium, including the plants, are semi-buoyant. So coconut fiber is semi-buoyant, compost is semi-buoyant, sand is not, and plant materials are semi-buoyant. So this is all one big mix, and it all grows together. And as the roots grow around the stones, that all helps to stabilize everything, stabilize the plants as well as the movement of the cobbles. So we specified the size of these stones at a size that we think provides just enough ballast so that the marsh is not apt to move. But if you had one of these severe events, they would actually move along with everything else. A lot of things are moving if it's that kind of energy. But we're talking about probably something in excess of like since we're all thinking about categories of hurricanes after the recent miss, like a category 3 or above. We're talking the kind of thing we haven't seen in a long time on Cape Cod. So I think it's properly sized, given the location. This is not as exposed as the Shore Road intervention, which was recently on an agenda for a certificate of compliance. These are smaller cobbles than were proposed at that site, because that site could be exposed to higher energies. Hopefully that answers the question.
All right. I suppose then, I think we did talk about having as an order of condition, those cobbles be taken out if they get exposed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to work with Nikki on some language if that's helpful.
Okay. All right. So I still don't see any hands. Anybody else have anything to say? Speak now. If not, I suppose we're ready to move to work session.
I'll make a motion that we move 157 Sears Road to a work session for an order of conditions.
But we need to have Nikki, I guess you had
Clark, second.
come up with a date.
Oh, the date, yeah.
Yeah,
September 1st.
September
September
1st.
1st. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we move 157 Sears Road to the September 1st work session for an order of conditions.
Clark, second.
And roll call vote. Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you. Be interesting to see how it turns out.
All right, next up we have 100/102 Cedar Street, Matthew and Susan Botein, map 13C, parcel 40-10, invasive removal and replacement with natives on a coastal bank. And I will share that plan as well. Maybe.
And there it is.
All right, perfect.
Let's see, who do we have? We have Nick Crawford.
This is Thad or Wilkinson, I thought. Or no,
Oh,
Crawford, sorry. Yeah, you're right, Crawford.
All right. Feel free to take us through it.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, a little low, but you can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Is this better?
No, I mean the volume.
Oh. Well, if you can hear me, I don't know how to make myself louder.
It's good. It's loud enough.
Good enough. All right.
Yep.
Nick Crawford from Crawford Land Management. We're proposing the ecological restoration of, I'll just kind of go through the project in a nutshell. Basically, the lower half, for all intensive purposes, of the coastal bank is in nearly pristine condition with a lot of highbush blueberry, winterberry, serviceberry. It's really the upper half of the coastal bank that's predominantly oriental bittersweet, vine honeysuckle, and is just kind of overrun with invasive species in general. We have shown the existing pitch pines that are in that area. Obviously, those are proposed to remain. We've also shown kind of all the associated built or developed areas within conservation jurisdiction, at least for this buffer zone in particular, because there is a wetland kind of in the middle of the property as you go towards Cedar Street. But what we're looking to do is remove the invasives on the upper half of the coastal bank. If we can utilize mechanical removal for the smaller specimens and a cut and wipe treatment on the larger plant material so that we can retain the stability of the soil and leave the roots in place, and blanket everything with erosion control blankets and seed it with the native seed mix as spec'd on the restoration plan. Then after one season of maintenance, ideally after one season of maintenance, we would intend to replant the area as per the plant schedule and the restoration plan that you're looking at. In total, there's 198 shrubs. About 140 of those are smaller species, sweet fern, Carolina rose, and some bearberry up towards the landscape and lawn edges, and about 50 larger native shrubs towards the bottom half of the bank. And obviously part of the idea of this is to preserve the existing views, and if it's planted as per the plan, maintenance should be basically view maintenance at least should be relatively non-existent on the coastal bank, as the species that are at the tippy top can reach their full growth potential without ever impeding the view. And as you get 6-7 feet down the coastal bank, that's where the beach plum, the bayberry, the serviceberry start to mix in, and those can also reach their full growth height or full growth habit without infringing on that or ever needing to be trimmed. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that you guys may have, and I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So we'll just throw it open to the commission. Anybody has any questions? And we have Bob.
Yes, Bob. Hi, Nick. There's a mixture of mature pines and oaks in that area. Will they all be retained?
So yes, all the native species on the upper half of the bank would be saved or salvaged if they're too tall and lanky to support themselves after the initial invasive removal. If it's something like beach plum or bayberry, other native deciduous species, we'd either cut them back to kind of a viable growing point or dormant or latent buds, or if it made more sense to flush cut a species like that because it's just kind of too tall and lanky from growing through the invasives, then we would also do that.
Okay,
let
because
it flush out more dense and more healthy without the competition.
Okay, yeah. If you walk down the stairs to the left, there's an oak there. It looks like it's been topped off, to try to retain the view. But would something like that be saved?
Any native species that's viable would be retained, saved, and/or regeneratively pruned to restore health. I'm actually just going to take a peek at the site pictures. It's been a little while since I've been there, so I just wanted to refresh my memory. I mean, for all intensive purposes, the area of invasive removal is most of the lower growing stuff on the top half of the bank. Everything from the lower half of the bank down to the bottom is 99% native, with a few small incursions of bittersweet, which we would intend on just cutting and treating.
Okay. Also, the pines have vines, maybe bittersweet growing up. That would be removed, correct?
Yeah, so we would cut and treat those vines growing up into the trees. If it's something like Virginia creeper, we would leave that, as it's not very aggressive and it's a native species. But if it's an invasive, we would treat it, cut it as high as we could, pull as much as we could. But if it looks like we're gonna, break any branches out of the canopy or anything, then we just cut it as high as we could and leave it up there to fall out.
And also, there's a wooden structure in the Marsh area, a couple of posts and a couple of cross pieces connecting those posts. probably for maybe boat tie-up. Are you aware of that?
It's been a while since I've been there, but I do recall seeing, at least at the time I visited the site, what looked like it was once a dock, but no longer is or hasn't been used for a long time. But I'm kind of speaking off the cuff. I don't know that for sure.
Okay, I think Nikki was going to investigate that part of it anyway, to see if it could be removed. Above the planting area and the existing landscape bed on the left side, if you're walking down the stairs, it looks like a former maybe mitigation area. There's some natives in there, some clethra and some Kalmia mountain laurel. There's one mountain laurel plant. It looks like there's an abundance of mulch over the roots in that area. And I was wondering if you could remove the mulch, which is impeding the water penetration and air penetration. And maybe add more clethra. It looks like a few of them died in the middle of that planting.
Okay.
Wonder if you can add more clethra to that bed there.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I'd have to take a peek, but I don't see why that would be an issue.
Okay, and on the right side, you have that hydrangea bed. That has an awful lot of mulch on it too, but the hydrangeas seem like they're healthy. But I think, if you could scrape some of the mulch off those areas, that would help those plants survive,
Yeah, I don't see that being an issue. As far as being able to scrape some of it out and remove it, I mean.
Yeah, and maybe replant that other native bed. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Janet, you have your hand up.
Yep, thanks, Bob. I actually have kind of the same question that Bob did, only coming at it from the opposite perspective, which was looking at the notes on the plan, is the reference to removing all, quote, approved vegetation. Now, when I go down the stairs, it's a densely vegetated coastal bank, and I could not figure out what was invasive and what was native. Do you know offhand what the rough proportions are?
I'd say that 95% of everything on the top 50% of the bank is invasive, and 95% or 99, I mean, there's almost no invasives on the lower half. It's in really good condition, and I'm not sure why that's the case, but there's no reason except for going in there and kind of hunting and pecking individual bittersweet vines that are here and there. There's really no reason to do anything on the lower half of it. All the invasiveness is up top.
So given that 95% is invasive, that seems there's not going to be much to salvage in the way of natives in that area?
Correct. I mean, I did see it when I did look at the property, it was leaf on. So it'll be a little bit easier when things are dormant, and in theory, when the invasive removal happens, when things are dormant, it'll be easier to differentiate the native species that maybe overtop or have a carpet of invasives over the top of them. Mm-hmm. But it is our intention, absolutely our intention, to leave all native species on the bank, regardless of where they are.
Is that tricky to do when you're using mechanical removal?
I mean, since this is all on a coastal bank, when I say mechanical removal, I'm just talking about hand pulling. But
I was going next. It's very steep bank, so I don't know how you mechanically.
Yeah. So we would everything on the bank would be done by hand, and whether we would pull it by hand or cut and treat it is, on a case-by-case basis, depending on how big it is and what species it is. But we would intend on using like a mini skid steer to come along the right side of the house if you're looking at it from the road, and basically just make a pile up in the lawn area and bring it back to the driveway with the mini skid steer. But all the work on the bank would be implemented by hand, regardless of whether it was chemical or mechanical.
Okay. So in terms of the schedule, the initial invasive removal, winter, early spring 2021-22, so sometime early next spring?
Yeah, I mean, basically, as soon as things go dormant and the nighttime temperatures cool down, late October or so even, we're able to get some decent seed germination of the native seed mix and put down our erosion control matting and hold everything in place until it really greens up the following spring.
And is that erosion control matting is that adequate? Do you need to do anything special given the steep grade of this bank?
No, they're 15-month erosion control blankets that have a mix of both straw and coir.
Okay.
So they're, I wouldn't say you'd get 15 months out of them, but I think it's reasonable to assume that they have, some sort of integrity up to a year. But given the high degree of native vegetation and that the bottom of the bank is stable, I wouldn't be concerned about anything uphill of that, basically.
Okay. The last question I have is in reference to the planting schedule.
Okay.
On the side, the sizes are listed as numbers, number 7, number 1, number 3.
Yep.
What does that mean, actually?
That's just in reference to gallon size. So a 1 gallon is like a typical perennial. Number 7 is, it's not literal interpretation. It's like a 7-gallon plant.
Right.
But that's how they size them at the nursery.
Okay. I just hadn't seen it expressed quite that way again. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any comments? I have a few, but I will wait if anybody else has any. All right, on the I don't hear anybody's. Just to circle back, Nick, to a couple of points. One is, I believe this is the place that I went and there was a boat tied up to the bottom of the stairs. And I have a picture of it actually, but I'm not 100% sure that that's this property. I think that it is. Because I took the picture because I think Bob had already mentioned to me that there was something for a boat tie up down there. When I went down there, indeed, I believe that there was a boat there. But it wasn't tied to the structure that Bob's talking about in the water. It was tied to the end of the stairwell. So that's something that needs to not happen, obviously, because and I think we should indicate in the order conditions, for example, there should be no boat tie-ups to in the area, either to the stairway or stairwell stairs, or to that structure if it's whether it's there or if it remains. Because the boat that was it was actually had matted down a bunch of the beach grass there.
Okay.
I
would agree with that.
Yeah. The other question, you indicated that there on the upper half of the bank there are some native tree, let's just call them saplings. I think you even mentioned an oak, and your intention is not to remove them.
Correct. I mean, we're going to leave all the natives on the bank. So if there are, juvenile seedlings or saplings up in the upper half where where basically all the invasive removal is, then they would be retained.
Yeah, and the reason I bring it up is as you also mentioned the interest, the natural interest of the applicants to retain their view. And of course, if you let an oak tree grow, their view would be impacted.
Right.
So just there's a little bit of a opposing language there. Is there, to your knowledge, a view corridor on file for this under, let's say, the previous?
I do not know that. I do not know.
But they're not asking for one here and now.
Not a particular, view corridor. I mean, I think that, the views from the living parts of the property or the frequented parts of the property are nice. And, if a handful of juvenile tree species come in here and there, we could potentially deal with them at that point in time, but I wouldn't see anything that would warrant us proposing, removal of all juvenile tree species or anything.
And when you say deal with them at that time,
come back to you.
I see. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good.
And Aldrich Chair, there were no formal view corridors proposed on this property in the past.
Okay, so there is nothing on the books. Okay,
Correct.
all right. Anybody else have anything? And hearing none. Nikki, I guess we would be ready to move to work session.
Correct, September 1st.
And also September 1st, Bob.
I'd like to make a motion that we move 100 to 102 Cedar Street to the work session for an order of conditions on September 1st, 2021.
Clark,
Roll-
second.
Roll call vote, Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Thank you all.
Great, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Have a great rest of August.
All right, up next we have 8 Windmill Lane, Howard and Inga Walker, map 16A, parcel 22-H9. Reconstruct existing sunroom with crawl space foundation and a new deck. And this is a John O'Reilly project.
And there's Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John O'Reilly for the Walkers. Chip and Inga Walker are actually on the call as well, and will certainly be available for any questions or comments from the commission. This property is located on the corner of Windmill Lane and Little Beach Road, and it's a very low-lying area, and we're dealing with a wetland resource of a floodplain. It's a AE zone with a still water elevation of 13. The entire property is within the flood zone. What the Walkers are looking to do is to rebuild an existing sunroom, same footprint, just with an updated foundation and new framing. They are looking to rebuild an entry step just off Windmill Lane, and no change in footprint, although we are replacing an existing stone step with a wooden tread to match the rest of the entrance. And then attached to the rebuilt sunroom, we are proposing a deck with a soak pool tied into the decking system. Soak pool is a pool that is a self-contained unit. It arrives on site, precast concrete chamber, if you will, with an open top. It is set on a gravel bed. The type of excavation is very limited. We're talking about going down about 12 to 18 inches below grade to set the pool base. And then once the pool base is built, set, the pool is placed on top, and the deck is constructed around it. We calculated the coverage increase that we have on the property to be just shy of 500 square feet. In accordance with your 2-to-1 mitigation ratio, we are providing over 1,000 square feet of mitigation in 2 plant beds. Earlier this week, or maybe even last week, we received a message from staff and with a couple comments about there is a resource to the north, which we will add the 100-foot buffer zone. It has nothing, it doesn't impact our work area, so we will add that. And she indicated a request to add some variety to the planting plan. This planting plan was originally developed by the Walkers, and we've been going back and forth the last couple of days, and they certainly understand the comment and are willing to certainly enhance the plant bed with some additional bayberry, and then some additional viburnum, whether they be arrowwood or some other variety that would be off the approved plant list. All work that's being proposed is within an existing lawn area. And so we have, so I think we have a very straightforward project. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission has.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll start off because I receive files in a digital form. I don't receive paper copies, so this may be why. But there were a number of components that I couldn't find in the submitted materials. There was no, well, I mean, you do indicate coverage. It's not on our standard table, but we'll just note that in passing. There was no discussion of performance standards, both state performance standards and town performance standards. I didn't see a variance request for working in the resource area. There's no work protocol and so forth. So I don't know whether or not that's because you submitted it, but it just not in digital form. I don't know, but I'm saying that I did not see those items. So before we're all said and done, we're going to need everything to be pretty complete.
Sure. I did complete the 8-page checklist, and there is the coverage. There's a coverage table. I did fill that out as far as area coverage.
Yep, the coverage table is present. That was my fault that it didn't get uploaded. It was a separate document, just the checklist. So I chose not to upload that to the Dropbox because it was just the checklist, and not realizing that you would want to see the coverage table. So that one was
Okay.
my fault.
So that's there. All right, that's
And-
good.
And then with regards to the variance on my cover letter dated August 10th, I do identify under the wetland resource that in accordance with Part 4 of Section 403 Town of Chatham Wetland Regulations, we are seeking a variance. I go through a project description. I go through the mitigation component. I go through the project alternatives, and then provide you a summary. It's a 3-page cover letter. I don't know if
Yeah,
you can share that.
I do have the cover letter. So, but I guess then of those things that I mentioned originally, the one thing that we haven't talked about is the discussion of the performance standards.
Well, this is a resource. This is a floodplain resource, and the State Wetlands Protection Act doesn't necessarily have any performance standards within the resource.
That is true.
For the resource. With regards to the Chatham bylaw, I believe that the foundation will be the foundation for the reconstructed sunroom will be designed in accordance with the requirements of the building code for allowing the floodwaters to come in and out, as well as the deck is elevated, so there's no compensatory storage taken up. There is a small amount of compensatory storage for the soak pool. But as you can see from the floodplain is elevation 13, and our pool will be submerged. So I did not see that as taking up compensatory storage, and we are talking about a 60 square foot, a 10 by 6 soak pool. So I did not see that as impact to compensatory storage. But I can certainly narrate that.
When you say compensatory storage, what do you mean by that?
Well, usually, I may be dating myself with those terms. Usually that if you're in a flood boundary area or flood zone area, if you fill in a flood zone, you typically need to provide some compensatory storage. About that, it comes more into play for inland flooding areas, but
yeah, I'm familiar with that.
I believe the town of Chatham has the requirement. They like to limit their filling within floodplains. So
well, that is true, but the compensatory storage, I don't recall any language of. So what I'm referring to is that the town of Chatham conservation bylaws list in itemized format in a floodplain what must not occur. In other words, there should be no deflection of wave energy, et cetera. So if you just take a look at that.
It's the regulation.
Chatham has, there, like John mentioned, there's no interest defined under the Wetland Protection Act, but Chatham has storm damage prevention, prevention of pollution, and wildlife habitat listed for flood zone.
It's
Okay,
in regulation 2.10.
right. So just, to look at those and make sure that they're addressed.
So I think that could probably be done with just a revised cover letter with those 3 topics.
Sure. With regards to wildlife habitat, we're working in lawn area now, and we're actually providing additional shrub area to provide the enhanced wildlife activity or wildlife value, if you will, on the lot. And the other 2 items I can narrate. As far as it's a still water elevation, it's not a velocity zone, so I'm not concerned with wave action or wave deflection. And I forget the other one, but I'll have to.
Prevention of pollution.
Thank you. Prevention of pollution. There is no. It's pool water. I don't see how it's going to be have an impact to prevention of pollution. We do have a septic system adjacent to that, which was previously permitted, but I don't see any. There's no hydraulics involved. There's no type of entity that would, if it enters the floodwaters, it's going to have an adverse impact to it.
Bob, could I add one point to our commentary on this?
Sure, go ahead.
If you take a look at bylaw 272-1, you'll see that wildlife and wildlife habitat are interests protected by this chapter. So to the extent that there is an impact on wildlife or in any way, shape, or form, we're under the literal wording of the bylaw, we're supposed to take that into account and make sure that it is protected. So I mentioned that in passing, just so that's another source to examine when you want to know whether or not a particular I'll call it a state of being, wildlife habitat, whatever. It's a good place to look to see if it's something that you need to give attention to.
I can take another look at that, but obviously we are working within a grassed lawn area that offers 0 wildlife interest, and we are offsetting the 500 square feet of deck and pool with over 1,000 square feet of native shrubbery. So I think your wildlife impact is enhanced by the mitigation we are providing. That's how I look at it.
I would not disagree, but the good point is you need to mention it. Brag.
I think all we're talking about is simply documenting how you see it all, so that we can, so that's on the record.
I understand them. Thank you.
Janet.
Yes, thank you, Bob. John, I'm trying to, can you help me figure out on the site plan? I don't see any elevations. So what I'm trying to work out in my mind is, so elevation 13 is the floodplain here. Do you know what is the existing elevation of the area where the deck is proposed?
It's, if you take a look at the plan, on the shaded sunroom, right at the corners, you have number 7.4.
Okay, so that's the elevation.
Those are spot grades, yes.
Okay, spot grades. All right, so if you're excavating 18 inches and you're putting gravel into that excavated area to set the pool on top, is that right?
Yes.
Then the bottom of the pool where it meets the gravel is at, I have 5.5-ish. Is that about right, or 6?
It's probably going to be closer to 6, but yes. Yep.
6. Okay. So then the top of the pool would be at 12 and a half?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the base of the pool is at elevation 7.
Yep.
bottom of the pool is elevation 7. Your
Okay,
deck, your deck around the pool is at elevation 11, and the pool sits up a little bit from the deck elevation. You can see a step up to it.
so that's a 12 then, let's call it.
Approximately 12 and a half. Yeah, it's about 5.5 feet tall on the soak pool. That would get you to 12 and a half.
Okay, but that's below the floodplain elevation still.
It's still below the floodplain elevation, yes.
Okay. What happens if this area we all know is subject to, even though it's a still water and it's not a VE zone, this area does get subject to storm flooding, as
Yep.
in the past. What happens if the storm flow it's higher than the top of the pool?
Well, the top of the pool is open to the air. So all you would have is a submerged tub, if you will, if floodwaters came over the top of it. It's
So
not,
what's-
it's not like
what's-
an empty,
What's below the deck? Is it just gravel?
it's just open space, sit up on, it's up on posts. So gravel, dirt, yes.
So how would it be, I mean, I'd like to think that that if there's an overflow situation, whether it's from, if it's from stormwater entering, that gravel would help dissipate that overflow. And is that the likely outcome? We've had situations where pools, we've had drains installed to handle any potential overflow. Don't know whether that's, in thinking about it with the gravel under the deck, that might serve a similar purpose.
The gravel is typically, in this case, going to be used for, support of the pool structure itself.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly can provide some. Are you talking, when you say overflow, you're talking from overflow from the pool water?
Yes, the pool water.
Okay. We certainly could live with a condition that we provide a 1 or 2 foot collar of gravel around the pool to accept that overflow. I don't think a 6 by 10 pool is going to be used, to create a lot of wave action within the pool. It's more just for soaking. So yeah, we can certainly do that gravel around the ring if that's customary.
Okay. Okay. And you said the deck is going to be at 11. Okay.
Yes.
And that's supported by sonotubes?
It'd be going to be supported by sonotubes and posts. Yes.
You know how many? We often see a profile that shows us the support systems.
Oh, I did provide you with a layout of the deck railing from SV Design.
Okay.
You're probably looking at probably 9 to 12 posts.
Okay.
Around the perimeter.
Okay.
I can confirm that number.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have the, I like Bob and digital only, so I'm looking at what I've got here.
I didn't see that.
I don't see that either, so we'll get that later. Okay, that's it for the moment. Let me write all that down. Thank you.
All right, Terry, your hand is up.
Yeah. Can you hear me, or am I on mute?
No, you're fine.
Okay. I don't think the compensatory storage applies on something other than non-inland waterways. So I think you're all set there. But I got a question just relative to the pool. It's not connected to the structure of the deck. It's separate. That's on. I'm assuming, right? You said that.
Yeah, the deck is framed around the pool. Yes.
Okay. And then I do have a question on how the pool, if it's compliant with the flood requirements, but you don't need to get a pool, you don't need to get a building permit for a drop-in pool like this, right? So And that's another question. You don't need a permit for that. I mean, you don't need a building permit for the drop-in pool, right?
I was under the understanding that the entire project would fall under a building permit.
Okay, because I was just, I'm not sure how it applies to the zoning, to the flood rules. But that may be, this is a question more for the board, but that may be out of our purview. And that's-
Terry, this is Chip Walker. My understanding, and we're learning as we go through this, I think we are going to zoning and we are going to Board of Health. And I think our builder would have to pull a building permit, is my understanding, because we're taking down the old porch and rebuilding a new, so we have a new foundation. So I always understand we do need a building permit, but I don't know how the pool applies to that or not personally.
Yeah.
The pool would, because it falls under safety issues, which is under the building commissioner. That leads me to my question of whether you're doing a fence that's built into the deck, or if you're doing an auto cover, or, I mean, it's really just to note in our permit, but that is something that building department controls as far as safety goes.
That's absolutely, Nikki. Thank you. We're doing an auto cover, so it'll be built in to cover it for safety.
Okay, perfect. And then, yes, the deck would also need a building permit. Again, for mostly safety, depending on the height of the deck, whether it needs a railing or not. So, and then any foundation work also needs a building permit. So this will definitely go to building, which would then get deferred to zoning if needed, which is more of our flood. The building commissioner is our flood FEMA person. So a lot of that falls more under zoning and building than conservation in our town particularly.
And the applicant has filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay. Does anyone else have any question? We have Bob.
I got a question, Bob.
Bob raised his
Call on
hand.
somebody else. Go ahead.
And I said, Bob, then I'll get you next.
Thank you for being fair, Bob. I was wondering on the outside of the pool structure is going to be concrete, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's going to be raised. So on one side, it's going to be exposed. It's not going to be, the deck's not going to be next to it.
That's correct. On the southwest side and the south side of the pool, yes.
I was wondering if you could take some of the mitigation plants and plant around the concrete, because I think that's going to be pretty ugly. And I was wondering if you could plant there, bring some of those mitigation plants around that.
Let me jump in. This is Chip Walker again. Just to clarify, John is correct that when the pool arrives from the manufacturer, it is concrete. And then there's a stone facade that gets put on there for aesthetics. So it's about a 1 to 2 inch stone facade. And we were thinking of, I think it's like New England round, something to that effect. So it won't be a concrete wall like my neighbor just built next to mine.
Okay, good enough. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. So Tom.
Oh, last question. What type of filtration and disinfectant system will the pool use?
I believe it's going to be a ionized pool, saltwater pool.
It is saltwater, yes.
An ionized salt water?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tom. So the added benefit of that is that in the event of a flood, it's salt water coming out, not chlorine.
Correct. There's not chlorine in this.
That's correct.
Okay. Oh, we have Trina, your hand is up.
Yeah, just curious with the pool, if you guys haven't pulled the permit yet, having just gone through this recently myself for a very shallow pool, I believe anything over 18 inches in the town of Chatham does require a fence around it. So I don't know if that's something that should be checked into prior to us writing up orders of conditions, if we're going to have to somehow come back to this and figure out where a fence would be put in. Because that was an issue I personally dealt with, even for a very shallow pool, that the town does require fencing around it.
It's my understanding that the automatic covering resolves the need of a fence.
Yeah,
believe
there
that
needs to be some sort of safety, and I think the building code in the last year or two was modified to say an auto cover does count as the safety. But if you weren't proposing an auto cover, you would definitely have to have a fence around this.
It's
Okay.
one or the other. Anything else, Katrina?
Nope, just wanted to make sure we weren't going through all of those, all of that work for having to come back to it again if that was required.
Trina, just out of curiosity, did they give you the option of doing either or? Did you just do the application and then they said, oh, you have to have a fence or something around this?
Yeah, I just put in an application myself, and they called me and said I'd have to put a fence. So it just ended up putting a fence around it.
Well, it's typical for applications that we see that it is one or the other will suffice. So I'm not sure if there's something different about yours. But anyway, I'm sure you'll like it anyway.
I do love it. It was well worth it.
All right. So anybody else? So what I have is a number of things that, so this still needs zoning. It needs Board of Health. So while we're waiting for you to go through those, there are some items that we talked about today, including a little more detailed discussion of performance standards. And I can't remember what else we talked about. Anybody else can?
Do we have a revised plan on the different, the addition of species to the planting?
Oh yes, the
bed?
diversity of the plantings, exactly. Thank you, Bob.
I thought Janet wanted some elevations also.
No, they're on the plan, actually.
They're on the plan, yeah.
Didn't,
Oh,
I
okay.
only see them in lines, not as spots, so I found them.
And is the pool water discussed? I can't remember at this point, but if it isn't, then it would be good to make sure that that's noted.
Yep,
The
it was
fact
saltwater.
that it is saltwater. Okay.
It's salt,
All right.
yes.
Okay. So some relatively minor revisions of the documentation, I think, will be okay. But Nikki, when can we? Well, I don't know. I guess, yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to just getting the revised plan and the narrative that just discusses the interests that we talked about earlier, the storm damage, pollution, and wildlife habitat. If there was a revised cover letter and then the revised plan to show those differences, I would be fine with it being on September 1st for the order. But, you know, that's up to you if you want to review it again.
I
mean,
think,
you know, it's
personally
always
speaking, yeah. I think
it's
it'd be
always-
okay from my perspective that because I don't think this is, as Mr. O'Reilly said, this is not a complicated project, fairly straightforward. I don't sense any of the commissioners have a fundamental issue with the project overall. I don't. It is in a completely disturbed area. It's a small little plunge pool, not complicated. So yes, if you could get those revised materials to us, I think we could dispense with it pretty easily on September 1st work session.
That would be wonderful.
Yep. All right, so Bob.
All right, then we're just looking for a motion to continue to the 1st.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we continue 8 Windmill Lane for an order of conditions to the work session on September 1st, 2021.
Clark, second.
All right, roll call vote. Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So we'll see you on the 1st.
Great. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.
Next up, we have 604 Orleans Road, Joseph Kennedy, map 12J, parcel 12, demolition of dwelling and reconstruction of a new dwelling. And this is a David Clark project.
Good afternoon.
Production.
The David Clark reduction.
The commission saw this project a few years ago for a septic upgrade. The property finally sold, and the new owner is holding off the septic upgrade until we get the permitting done for the house project. So what's involved is the demolition and rebuilding of a structure that is entirely within the floodplain. It is about as close to Riders Cove as you can get with a house. A portion of the site is filled tidelands, and I did submit the Chapter 91 permit for the bulkhead and the fill. You'll see on the water side of the house a deck that is not the traditional shape that you would see a deck. And that is because of the historic mean high water line. Chapter 91 is basically set up for water dependent uses. A deck for a single family home is not considered a water dependent use, and to get a permit to go over that line, the bar is set considerably higher than traditional Chapter 91 permitting. So that's why you see the deck cut off at the historic mean high water. The house itself is just a little bit smaller than what's there now. It's not because of the extra costs of doing construction in the floodplain. The less corners you have in a house reduces the cost considerably. So we're taking 2 corners out of this house and making it a rectangle. There is a net increase in site coverage, and that is primarily because of the deck. This house is coming up basically almost 7 feet from the existing grade. And so the result is a disconnect from the first floor area, the living space, to the yard area. So that's why we're seeking an expansion. And that totals about 253 square feet. And that also includes the new entryway on the south side of the house. We need to get up 7 feet, so that requires a larger platform at the top and additional steps to get up there. The foundation will be FEMA compliant. It'll be a standard poured in place concrete with the required flood vents so that storm waters can enter the foundation and not pose any additional hydraulic pressure for safety reasons. The portions of the property closest to the bulkhead on the north side may require additional structural elements for the foundation. Namely, we anticipate there's probably peat underneath the fill, and you can't construct a new foundation on that. So we might be required probably maybe half of the foundation to put in helical piles. So what would happen is we would excavate down to 4 feet below grade for the frost protection for the footings, and then set up the equipment to put in the helical piles at the requisite spacing, and then pour the concrete footing on top of that. Basically, it's kind of considered a grade beam. There really are no other changes to the property. We do have Billingsgate Land Management on board to provide a restoration plan. He just got on board. He did provide a narrative, which I sent to Nikki, I think yesterday morning, basically outlining his ideas of what to do here. there really isn't a lot of room on this lot to provide what the commission's used to seeing for mitigation is more woody shrubs and things like that. And because this property is inundated at least once a year, I think, at this point, due to the increase in tide levels in the Pleasant Bay complex. He's chosen a coastal seed mix for the areas along the top of the bulkhead to get us to the required mitigation number for this project. And that's about it. The project does have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We already have an order of conditions for the septic system as well as Board of Health approval. And again, that portion of the project would be done in conjunction with the house construction. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, David. So it sounds like we will be seeing a mitigation plan.
Yes, sir.
An unusual one, or a one that is not of a type that we normally see.
Yes. Due to our recent experience with the Zoning Board of Appeals and houses in the floodplain, we probably think it's appropriate to continue this meeting till the first meeting in October, and that would give us time to finish the mitigation plan and get it to you so that you can look at it one more time before providing comment to zoning board. I believe it was filed with zoning board this week, so I don't think we're going to be heard till October anyways.
Okay, so we can ask questions about the things we have in front of us today, but
yep.
we plan to continue. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bob.
On the mitigation, David, was he planning on removing any invasives on the northeast side of the property? There's some porcelain berry, I think, overtaking some of the maybe cedar trees on that side. There was a shed there as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we absolutely. If there's any invasives on the property, they'll go.
Okay. And how about that shed? Will that remain, or was that planning on going?
The shed is going.
Okay. Okay, perhaps you could identify that on the plan. Also, there's some plants, it looks like native plants. I wasn't able to identify them between the, that's a boathouse, I assume, there next to the dwelling?
To the west of it?
Yeah, the southwest.
Yeah, that's on an abutting property.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's all I had, just the invasives on the northeast end. Thank you.
You're welcome.
David, did I hear you say all invasives on the property will be removed?
Yes.
Okay. Terry. Oh, you're muted.
Hold on.
Still muted.
I got one
There you
question.
go.
Why didn't you put this on piles? It looks like it's got a closed foundation except for the breakout, David.
Yeah, it's not in a velocity zone and it's not in a wave impact zone, so there's no requirement to be on piles.
Okay.
That's certainly something that could be considered. It's more expensive to go on piles, but at the end, the flood vents provide the same protection to the structure as being on piles.
Okay.
Is that it, Terry? Okay. All right, Janet.
Thanks, Bob. So, David, the current elevations range from 2 to 4 to 6 and almost over to 8. So, how much excavation do you need to do to pour the foundation? How far below grade does the foundation begin?
we need a minimum of 4 feet of frost protection. So the lowest adjacent grade to the existing structure right now is elevation 5.3. So we would probably excavate a trench around the perimeter, probably I'd say 5 to 6 feet wide, to give the construction workers ample room to maneuver down there, and we'll most likely remove the organic layer if there is any remaining. This used to be a boathouse when it was first built back in, I think, the 30s. So we don't know really what's under there, but if there's, I doubt there's any organic matter left underneath the building, but if there is any, that would come out. And we would probably, after the foundation is done, is top dress everything with stone within the foundation to bring it back to existing grade. Because under the building code, we're not allowed to have any enclosed space below the lowest adjacent grade. So the interior of the foundation has to match the lowest grade outside.
Okay.
So you can't step down, so to speak.
Right. Okay. And then at what elevation are the flood vents? At what point do they capture any flood water coming?
They have to be no higher than 1 foot above the grade at the location of the flood vent. So
Okay.
the lowest adjacent grade, like I said, is 5.3. That is on the northwest corner, and then on the southeast corner, I believe the lowest grade is almost elevation 6. So it's almost level all the way around. We're talking about maybe 6 to 8 inch difference from one corner of the building around back to the other corner. So the flood vents will almost be level. I mean, actually, they could be set level at the same elevation all the way around and still comply with the 1 foot requirement of the building code.
And you don't force, there's no need, you're not going to be doing any regrading in the area too?
Nope. Given this location, we're not adding the 2 feet of planting medium around the building like the zoning bylaw allows. It's not necessary here,
So you're going to live with the whatever is exposed, the 5 or so feet?
Past experience with the zoning board down in the Little Beach area when a house went up this high is they had concerns about the aesthetics of it, and they'll probably have the same here. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It'll probably be, if they do require some type of screening, it might be something applied to the foundation, like a lattice or something like that.
Right. I noticed there's a series of stakes that are labeled wall. And they're on the southeast side, heading over toward the. So I'm looking on the plan to figure out where that is shown.
So that encloses the leaching system for the septic system. So it's basically two-sided. We designed that to kind of mimic the bulkhead rather than having a poured concrete wall for the mounted septic system. We're doing a timber posts and planks because the wall is only, I think, 2 to 2.5 feet high to get us to the required separation between the bottom of the system and groundwater. So it's not terribly high, but aesthetics was the reason for doing that more than anything else.
Is it shown on the plan anywhere? Is it that double dotted line? I don't think so.
So you see the water line coming into the property along the driveway. So right next to it, you see those series of circles. So that's the symbol for like a short piling and timber wall.
Okay. You just add that label so that next time, because if I don't see this again until October, I'll be in the same place going, oh, where's the wall?
Well, we do have a note just on the south side of the neighbor's boathouse. It says proposed wooden retaining wall.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't looking off the, okay, never mind. I've got it now. Thank you. And oh, last thing, the stairway. So that's on the north side on that corner.
So from the deck, there's a stairway to get down to the yard, yes.
Is that and then that would be the main entrance to the house, or the main entrance?
No, I think the south side is, building code
Second
requires
stairway.
2 forms of egress.
Okay.
So we need 2 stairs to get in and out of this building.
Okay. And do we have a profile of the deck?
I can generate one and have that for the next meeting.
Okay. This is a little bit out of our but in this zone, is there any particular requirements for the deck structure to prevent them from becoming a problem in a flood?
As with the foundation, I believe the building department's going to want a structural engineer to stamp the connections between the deck and the footings, the support system for it.
Okay.
So it would have to be flood resilient, yeah.
Yeah, we have to make the finding that it's not likely to become
Correct.
a hazard if it detaches and is removed. Okay. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Anybody else? I have something, but just make sure everybody else had a say.
I have one question, but
Okay,
why don't
Tom.
you go ahead first, Bob?
No, go ahead. I'm actually making a note or two, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. David, I was hoping you would, as part of the development of this site, that your client would provide some additional wildlife habitat. I noticed on the bottom of page 8, the last 2 sentences, you say no alteration of wildlife habitat is proposed. Although upland habitat lawn will be disturbed, upland habitat is not a public interest protected by the Wetland Protection Act. That may be true, but our bylaw 272-1 lists wildlife and wildlife habitat as interest to be protected under our local law. So hopefully you could find some way to help enhance the wildlife habitat of the site, although I would agree with you that it's small and difficult.
Yeah, well, we certainly going to provide the required mitigation, and that alone, as you heard in the previous application, would, in my opinion, increase wildlife habitat on the site. The loss of wildlife habitat from the decks, although it's 253 square feet, it's 7 feet off the ground. So there's still a wildlife corridor underneath that deck. We're not going to put lattice underneath that deck to create some enclosed space. So that certainly will allow wildlife to still go through the area where the deck is. And there might be some opportunities to do some planting under there. It is the north side of the house, but it's currently a lawn that's poor quality. So obviously, I think the planting plan that will be presented will offset any loss of meaningful wildlife habitat.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Karen, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just have one question. The rinse station, is there any way we could move it a little further back so it's not quite as close as to, the water?
It's pretty much where the outdoor shower is now. And that's why we chose that location. Again, it's 7 feet off the ground. So not sure where else we could put it and have it still connected to the deck.
Okay, I just like the idea of it being a little further away from water if people are using any shampoos or anything. Well,
since, let me see if I can jump in on this. I'm glad that, Karen, that you raised the dreaded rinse station, because I was hoping I wouldn't have to be the person to do it. So thank you. So David, would you mind telling us a bit more about the rinse station, what it'll be connected to, where the water will go, and so forth?
So we,
And I note that you just referred to it as an existing shower, but on the plan it's called a rinse station. So
Yep.
we have that again.
Yep. We weren't proposing anything underneath it. It would probably be some plantings under there because it probably would get some sunlight for half the day. Don't know what else to say. I think we had this discussion on a project a few months ago.
Yes, we have,
In my mind, it really doesn't pose any issues in that whether the water goes through a septic system or not, it really doesn't matter because it's gray water and not black water from like a toilet or something. So I really don't see any issues with it.
Yeah, well, this is a debatable thing. If there is indeed a shower with soap and shampoo and blah de blah, which it probably will be. So that water, then I guess the way it currently is designed is going to fall 7 feet down. Is it a pipe going down to the grade below?
No, it would just fall through the deck.
Yes. Through the deck. Oh, I see. It's on top of the deck and just falling through the slats. Okay. So it goes down to the ground and then, winds up where it will wind up, which in our case, we fear is that it winds up in the wetland. So we don't have a fantastic way of dealing with that, do we? Other than to say this must not.
We have this developed some standard language about no chemicals,
no chemicals. Yeah, just basically water.
Should install a camera inside these rinse stations just to make sure that the conditions being adhered to.
That's an excellent idea, Janet.
Somebody's just we have a drone to go and check every now and then. There isn't, all we can do is say that, and I think we should probably expand the language a bit and use the order as here's why we're saying that. I think people have a tendency to read that language and go, yeah, right. But I think it would help to make it a finding in there that due to the proximity of the water to here, that there's a distinct likelihood that anything that's used in that shower is going to end up in shallow groundwater and then in Riders Cove. And so to protect that, we're going to restrict any kind of chemical use there and hope for the best.
Hope for the best. It's a teachable moment.
Also an excellent suggestion by Janet.
The camera?
Yeah, no comment on that. So Bob, your hand is up.
Yeah, and I just maybe would like to see, like David suggested, maybe some plantings around the shower. At least the roots from the plantings would absorb some of the water and so forth. So that would be
good idea. If the plants all die, then the applicants know that they're chemicals that are killing the plants.
Yeah.
There you go.
A little canary.
Just to confirm, I have to exit.
Oh, you have to go, Bob. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're left with a quorum, so thank you. Yeah. Terry.
Yeah. I don't really like the idea of the shower being 7 feet off the ground and little kids running under the deck, to be honest with you. I don't know if, can we just have a requirement that there's a pan underneath the shower and just to put a pipe into a dry well?
Yeah, we can't do that.
All right.
The plumbing code and Title V conflict with that, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's the age-old problem with these.
I know what I'd do if it was my house.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see, where are we? We have, I guess that's it for the commentary. And we've already talked about how we're going to be receiving new materials. And so we're continuing to, was it October?
13th. 13th is the first hearing date.
Okay, October 13th.
There was some abutters that had some
there were
questions, and so I just hope you.
Oh,
Here
really? I
we
didn't
have-
get any.
We have a hand up, Minglewood Homes. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hello, how are you? Tim Smith,
Yes.
Minglewood Homes,
Yes,
or
hello.
just Tim Smith in this case. I am the abutter at 606 Orleans Road to this property. So just a couple things, a couple concerns that I have, and nothing major, but I have seen that house surrounded by water. The way that comes in, it does go through the house, surrounded with water, and then runs out towards the road, but does not come onto my property on that end at all. So I just want to make sure that all those grades are shot, maybe every 3 feet, every 2 feet, and so that when that project is done, that grading does not change whatsoever. Because if it does raise up, I understand the rock wall, the wood wall in the back for the septic system, but for the rest of it, and I know in the floodplain, you say that we're not supposed to change the grade. We didn't change the grading over where we are. So I just want to make sure that that is a stipulation that we check the land the way it sits now, and when the project's done, the land is in the same position. I just don't want to push that water anywhere off to the other neighbor's boathouse or back over onto my property, into my driveway would be my biggest concern. Because during a storm, I can get into my house without having to drive through any water. That was one thing. And then, as I said, I didn't see any mitigation plantings on here, but, we'd love to see on our side of the property line, on our side of the fence, we have a bunch of natural cedars that we put in there. We've lost one more of the pines just because of the pine borer beetles. So eventually we'll come back to you and ask to have that replaced with a natural American cedar. But maybe over in the right-hand corner where the deck is, facing the water side, if you're looking at the water on the right-hand side, they could possibly do some woody structure there as far as cedars in that area, not to infect any of their view, but just to kind of give a little bit more privacy between the two properties, as well as adding some woody structure in there. But not, here again, I understand it's all about the view there. Those are really my only, they're not really concerns, but I just wanted to bring up to you. And I wish them the best. So those are two of my points.
All right.
Just to comment on that. So like we mentioned earlier, we don't have an official planting plan yet. So hopefully David can take some of those concerns and comments into consideration when developing the plan. And then as far as altering the water flow to your property, we have that as pretty much a condition in almost all of our orders of conditions, that they are not allowed to affect water going onto other people's properties. So if it was found that did happen, then they would have to remediate, and it is part of their recorded order of conditions.
Right. It's inevitable, depending on how big the surge is or stuff. We will get water on our property, of course. But if we get a lower storm, I just want to make sure it doesn't get pushed. So it would be just as easy, if you could take a couple of control points, David could do that very simple, a couple control points, and then when the project's done, just check the control points. Pretty easy process there for that. So thank you very much.
The as-built should have the elevations, and they should be, more or less generally the same at the end of the project.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, or whether you just
We
agree.
fully expect we're going to be required to provide an as-built plan for that purpose as well as others.
For that reason, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Bob V is gone. So if we have no more comments, then it would be, I think we decided Tom was going to make the motions, and Bob V's absence.
But then someone's going to have to second it. And so.
Oh,
Janet's volunteer. Right.
I can do that.
All right, I move, let's see, are we going to the work session or are we coming back?
We're coming back.
October 13th.
October 13th, okay. I make a motion that 604 Orleans Road, map 12J, parcel 12, be continued until October 13th.
Second.
Well done, both of you. I think that,
Yay.
I think Bob must be,
I found my
his job
calling.
is in jeopardy. His job is in jeopardy. All right, roll call vote. Janet,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Terry.
Aye.
I vote aye, so that's all in favor except for Bob. Again, I don't know how we count him. I guess he just didn't vote.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, for this one, it would basically be like he wasn't at the meeting.
Yeah, for that particular vote. Yeah. Okay, so that does it for the NOIs.
Next up, we have the certificates of compliance. There's 4 of them. I do recommend approval overall for all of them. If you want me to just go through them all and do one vote, if you.
That sounds nice if we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any questions, we can always throw one
Yeah.
out and vote on the other ones.
Ditch it. Yeah.
So the first one is 10 Crisscross Lane, Ronald Rudnick, map 14C, parcel G6, SE 10-2729, enlarge the pool house. So this one had applied previously and was denied because the plantings hadn't been in for long enough. They have been now at this point, and they are doing fine. And the shed was to be raised above ground level, and from what I could tell, that hadn't been done when they first applied, but it is now. So those 2 things have been rectified, so I recommend approval for that one. 154 Mill Creek Road, Janice and Edwin McCausland, map 4C, parcel 20, SE 10-3070. They demo and rebuilt the dwelling, invasive removal and mitigation plantings. I can read the engineer letter if you would like. There's a couple of things that weren't completely up to, let me just grab her letter.
Okay, maybe you could just summarize.
There was a boulder retaining wall constructed in the front of the house in order to reduce the runoff on the sloping front yard, which I was out there and I agree with that. I understand the need for that. You can barely even see it's there. It's completely planted all around. So I don't have a problem with that. There's a split rail fence along the front line. Doesn't really have any environmental impact. It's between the property and a roadway. The 2 air conditioning units were installed, and I think the biggest thing was the driveway was a different type of pervious material was used, so it looks more like brick, but it is pretty clear that it is pervious. I don't see a lot of runoff issues or anything coming off the driveway. So with that one, I recommend approval as well. Then the next one is 26 Captain's Cove Road. Invasive species control and bank restoration. As I mentioned in the agenda meeting with the chair and vice chair, the project's over 6 years old. There was no before pictures, no as-built was required. The area is vegetated, so I can't say that it's not in compliance by any means. The vegetation is there. It looks good, but I don't have any, because there's not a lot of information from the past as far as when they applied. I don't really have anything to compare it to. So the area is vegetated, that's supposed to be. And 162 Shore Road, Barbara T. Weller Family Trust, map 60, parcel 29, SE 10-2048. That was in addition to the dwelling. Again, it's kind of the same thing, no before pictures, no as-built required. So as far as I can tell, the addition matches the pretty much approximate footprint that it was supposed to.
Is that one also older?
Yes. Yeah, 2048. We're on
Really?
what, 3-4? That's 1,000 permits ago.
All right. Well, hopefully we're doing a better job these days at making sure that COCs can be adequately reviewed.
I definitely think so. And, you know, a lot of times there's a lot of people just automatically submit pictures. I'm pretty good about taking pictures on my site visits if I, you know, feel that it's a questionable thing. So I think we're definitely doing better.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about these four? Any reason why we would not be able to vote on these as a block? Hearing none. I await a motion.
I move that we approve the applications for certificates of compliance for 10 Crisscross Lane, map 14C, parcel G6, SE 10-2729, 154 Mills Creek Road, map 4C, parcel 20, SE 10-3070, 26 Captain's Cove Road, map 10L, parcel C3, SE 10-3144, and 162 Shore Road, map 16D, parcel 29, SE 10-2048, for approval of their applications for certificate of compliance.
Masterful.
Second that.
Roll call vote. Janet,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
and I vote aye, and Bob is not here.
All right, now we have our old friend 125 Stage Harbor Road. So this was for that water line. It was supposed to go from Cross Street up the shared driveway and then to 125 Stage Harbor. The neighbors that shared that driveway did not like that proposal, so they had convinced the homeowners to move it to come from Stage Harbor. So David Clark submitted a plan a day or two ago. I mean, we just had this meeting, I think last Thursday, so he got it to us within 2 or 3 business days. And then this morning at 6:30, I got an email from one of the abutters that said they no longer want to go from Stage Harbor and they want to go back to Cross Street. So that's where we are at this point.
Oh, okay.
So as far as I know, they're going off the plan that we originally approved. So that's, I mean, there's nothing to vote on at this point. They aren't changing plans at this point, as far as I know. No official, like David sent his new plan and work protocol, but there was no, originally I'd said it was an emergency certification because the people that they're borrowing water from are leaving in October and turning off their water. So it became a public health type emergency for these people to have water in their home. But as of this point, it looks like they're going back to the original Cross Street plan that we've already approved.
Okay.
So
no, it
barring any
changes like
changes or any more lawyers, that is what was there before is what is staying. So that's
Any
really
idea when this will actually happen?
The email said they look forward to working with the Modicas, Golden Orchard Properties, to rapidly get their water line in. So
Yeah.
hopefully that is the case and the neighborhood can be happy. And their mitigation plan
that may be overstating it. Overstating it. But yeah, so as of yesterday, I thought we had a whole different thing to vote on today, but it has changed once again.
Right.
So.
Yep. 6:30 this morning, just scrolling through my emails. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so I guess we just move on.
Yeah, we just move on.
Reason has prevailed.
Yeah.
So discussion and possible vote. We have board reorganization. So as Bob mentioned, Joe just had too much going on to actively participate in the commission at this point. So he has elected to resign for now with the hopes of coming back. And then Mary Sullivan has graciously agreed to step up into his position. So we just need to vote that she becomes a full member instead of an alternate.
So I just have one question for Mary. Are you of sound
Yes.
mind? Are you of sound mind?
Did I turn my sound on?
Yes, you are. We're hearing you with full awareness and okay. So yes, thank you, Mary, for. And the thing is, what's different from your situation compared to most people who join the commission who weren't associates, you know exactly what you're getting into. So
Yes, so it's all my own fault if I
it is your own fault. Exactly right. So I think then the procedure, as I understand, is that we take a vote, and then that would go to the select board for a vote as well.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, everyone gets a 3-year term, but I'm not sure when Joe's term started. So she is filling his term.
He just started.
He just renewed. Yeah. Okay, so basically, Mary will have 2 years and 10 months or something.
Virtually
that her appointment will be assigned, and then when that expires, she would renew if she wanted. But yes, I believe it has to go to. I'll check with the administrator's office, but I believe it has to go to a vote for them, and then she would probably have to be re-sworn into the new position.
Right. So do we have a motion?
I move that we approve Mary Sullivan and forward our approval to the select board for their review and further assessment, so that she becomes a voting member of the commission.
I'll second that.
And let's have a roll call vote. Janet?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Terry?
Second.
And I, is that an aye, Terry?
Yes, give me a second. Okay, yeah, I'm on mute. Yep.
You're voting.
Yes,
you're voting aye. Okay.
I
Okay.
didn't know I was on mute.
All right. I'm voting aye as well. So it's unanimous among those.
Can I chime in?
Sure.
Crystal.
Crystal. Okay.
So I got a list from Paula saying whose terms were ending. Joe was 6/30/2024, but he was never sworn in for his new term.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to, Mary, you may be on for that full 3 years then.
That's 2 extra months. 2 extra months.
I forgot about
that. To the best of my knowledge, I'm not planning on going anywhere else. So.
And then just to be on the safe side, this may have been like a Truro thing that I ran into once, but we have to vote to accept Joe's resignation as well.
Oh.
This is, I mean, this could be just being formal.
Yeah,
like,
I understand.
Extra formal, just to make sure that I have votes that, yes, we accepted his resignation, and yes, we accepted Mary's stepping up. So if we could just do, we accept Joe's resignation as well.
Yeah,
okay, I make a motion with an extremely heavy heart that we accept Joe's resignation from the commission.
Second.
Roll call vote. Janet? Did you hear me, Janet? Or are you still with us?
Aye, aye, aye.
Okay.
She was off crying.
Yes.
Because we're so upset. Me too.
Oh.
Well, yeah.
I vote aye also.
Okay.
But it's with great.
Yes, yeah, we're all.
I mean, it's a heavy heart that we see Joe go.
Karen?
We hope he comes back soon.
Yes, we do.
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. All voting aye except for the absent Bob.
I'm sorry, guys. I just got a phone call, an emergency call that I have to go and take.
Okay. We're essentially done, except for we'll have to get someone else to vote to adjourn. So
consider me voted for. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Sorry about that. Got to deal with this. Okay. Thank you.
I had one question about,
Okay.
which is, at its last hearing, we had scheduled 314 Morris Island Road for today, and I didn't know what happened. You know, if they withdrew something or whatever, but I had it down for today's hearing.
314.
I'll have to get back to
Yeah,
you.
they were supposed to get a letter to us by August 10th the agent was going to send a letter to them saying that they need to file by August 10th to bring the property into compliance. That's all I know. That's what I wrote down in my notes.
Is that the the garden shed one?
Oh, that one.
Yeah, I think that's yes.
Yes.
That's the one that Karen and I went out and did our site visit on.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and
I'm sure we
accept
remember it well.
responsibility for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, Tom. I've been thinking about that recently as well, but I hadn't remembered that there was a specific trigger time. But yes, I for one reason or another, I think it is a good idea to check back on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I sent the letter. I mean, that was right when I started, so it's
right.
hard to
blur
remember
now,
practice, but yeah, I'll check in on that. I'll have to get back to you.
Yep.
And
may I ask what the white pond, blue pond complaints are?
Yeah, so
yes.
this was the last 2 weeks probably. We've had a lot of neighbors or people in that area on those ponds come in to town hall. I think at least 3, saying that someone on L Street was filling in the area between the 2 ponds. I believe it's white and blue pond. There's also black pond out there. No one could quite figure out which ponds were which. But I believe we decided they were white and blue. And it's honestly just really low water level right now. So you used to be able to kayak between the 2 ponds. Right now there's like a sandy bridge between this L Street property and across the ponds property. And then someone on Balfour Court took it upon themselves to start excavating the sandy bridge area the other day. So I mean, it's kind of a mess, but myself and my supervisor, Bob Duncanson, Dr. Bob, both went out there, are in complete agreement that the beach is very naturalized. It's obviously mixed dirt, grained sand. It's not something that's been cleaned and dumped, and you know, the colors are the same. It's not, I mean, it's been bleached. It's not like if you bought fresh sand and put it in a sandbox, it doesn't look like that. Vegetation's growing through it and all over his beach. So we honestly do not believe that he is dumping sand. He did admit that he was raking his sand and like picking up the pine needles and feathers and the debris that gets into the corner of his lot at the sand bridge. So when we called the most angry of the neighbors and explained what was happening, and it is just low water, and eventually the water will rise up again and the sandy bridge will be underwater again. They said okay, and then we got a phone call from the homeowner's wife that someone was out on their property digging a hole. So Dr. Duncanson went out there. He was digging the trench to open up the waterway between the 2 ponds, which is not allowed, obviously. And so he made him fill it back in. Originally, we put this on the agenda because we were questioning whether to fine the person that was doing this work. I think since then we've decided, after our annoyance of, are you serious, on Friday, we decided, you know, all right, he got scolded, he's going to get his letter, and let's just not fine him yet. And then if there's another issue, we will fine him. but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I've been getting a lot of emails of people on these ponds, like videotaping the guy, like sitting on his beach or raking. And it's not okay for that to be happening to someone. So just because, and it's private property, these people can kayak and canoe over it and he lets them, but it's his property. And so it's just something I wanted to bring to your attention in case it becomes a town issue, or, I mean, you all are connected to various people throughout the community. So if you hear about it, I just wanted to let you know that this is happening. And yeah. And
So
I discourage all people to stop taking pictures of their neighbors or videotaping them. It's not, I mean, I get it. I have to have evidence if I'm going to do an enforcement, but at the same time, please use discretion with taping people without their knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So in your professional estimation, there was no grounds for any sort of violation on the part of the homeowner raking his beach.
Yes, we had him apply for an administrative review just so that he could, so it's right by the airport and they shoot off things to get rid of the birds out of the airport, and then the birds land in this pond and there's fecal matter and feathers and pine cones and sticks that all wash up onto this blocked corner of this person's property. So he's just trying to keep his beach generally kind of nice and not smelly and all that kind of stuff. So he did file an administrative review to continue to be able to do that, because we said, you are working on your beach, you do need some sort of permission. So due process, he filed that immediately.
And you've received that?
Yes, received it. Yep.
And you've approved it?
Yes, and there was zero sign that he was actually dumping sand. I think the wheelbarrow that people have been sending me pictures of was probably to take up twigs and the gross stuff that he was raking up. So I'm not sure what's going on in this pond community, but they seem out to get him for some reason. But
and the other the person or persons who dug the trench have received a letter.
I'll have to check on that. Dr. Duncanson said he was going to send it.
He was, okay.
I think he wanted to be clear that we decided not to fine him. Mm-hmm. He kind of wanted to wait it out over the weekend and think about it. So as long as you guys are fine without fining him this time, if there's another issue, then he will 100% be fined.
You described the trench to me in our previous conversation as something along the lines of what a 5-year-old might do on the beach. So it's not a deep trench.
It wasn't at the point that we got out there. Okay. So it was like a kid dug a hole and wanted to make a little river around a sandcastle or something. But I imagine if we hadn't gone out there, he would have made it a full.
Kept going. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. At least for kayak to get through is what I think he was aiming for.
I mean, it's certainly true that water levels in ponds these days is very low. I know this for a fact. And so that probably is the salient issue preventing people from customarily kayaking through the one pond to the other. So I hope that they all realize that. But yes, my opinion is that we not take it any further at this moment. Hopefully everyone calms down.
All right, that's what Dr. Bob and I agreed. So we just wanted to run it through you first before we officially made that decision.
Anybody have any other points of view on this? Okay, so I guess that's what that is.
And with that, I think we're pretty much done. I thought we were going to have a much bigger agenda in the, what is it, the 8th, September 8th meeting. But as far as I know, we've only gotten 2 applications, so.
Yeah, I just don't understand why the volume that we customarily deal with is so reduced, but I'm not going to complain too much about it. All right, so do we have?
I move that we terminate the meeting.
With extreme prejudice, yes.
Yes.
Or otherwise known, AKA adjourn.
Right.
have
We need
second?
someone to second because Janet's
Yeah.
gone.
I
Right.
second it.
There we have it. And now we need a roll call vote of, see who's left. Tom,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Terry,
Aye.
and I will also vote aye. All right, well, thank you all. And 2 hours and 10 minutes.
That's not bad.